Hello and welcome to the Fulgari podcast brought to you by Sikh Women's Aid. I'm Shadish Pal, and as always, we will give you this disclaimer for our podcast. It's a trigger warning because often the subject matters that we talk about can be upsetting. And if you do find that any of our conversations, anything that we talk to you about, does upset you, please do take a break from the podcast and come back and listen to us later. Or alternatively, you can contact us if you need any help as well. So today I'm joined again by my sisters, Suki Kaur and Minu Sangu. Welcome to the podcast, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
So today we're going to talk about something that we have diagnosed as a condition. This condition is called the Hai Mera Put syndrome. And we've seen lots of our women, clients who contact us. Sometimes it's their wider family who contact us. And, over these last few years, couple of years, we've worked with around 500 women now. And so many of them will talk about the, how this is displayed and the conditions, the different sort of conditions of this Hai Mera Put syndrome and what happens. So, I recall very recently getting a call from a mum who called us and said, I'm really worried about the relationship that my daughter's husband has with his mother. So this is the daughter's mother-in-law. And I said, why? What's wrong? Like, what's happened? And she said, well, if my daughter goes out with her friends and my son-in-law goes out with his friends, the mother-in-law is fine. She's happy, she's okay. If they go out together, she's in a strop. She goes into a mood. She doesn't talk to them. And she's just really annoyed, the fact that they're going out together. And she said, and on the weekends, my son-in-law has to sit with his mum and have breakfast, lunch, and his evening meal. And if he doesn't, his mum's in a mood again.
Wow.
And she said, it's a really difficult situation. And that's we making a bit of a joke out of it. But actually, it can be really, really serious as well, because we've seen what mother-in-laws can do. And, in a previous podcast, we've talked about Sergey Atwell, for example, who was murdered on the order of her mother-in-law. So that's the sort of extreme side of it. But there's a lot in between that as well, where women are very much involved in the abuse of women. And we've seen that because of our report as well, that we did the survey last year and the year before. And we know that, half of those who responded to our survey last year in 2022 said that half of them said that there was a second person who was abusing them. And in most cases, that was a female in-law. And we know from our casework we're talking about mother-in-laws. But Minnu has a different story because she's a fantastic mother-in-law. And it's funny because you are one of very few people who I've heard that talks very, very highly of her mother-in-law. So you're actually one of the lucky ones.
Because it's always me and mum, or BG,
Yeah.
against Suki, really.
Yeah.
It's always so.
Yeah.
If ever there's a discussion between me and Suki and we're disagreeing on something, and he'll be like, Lelo, look, ki kendi hai, and she'll be like, tu chup kar, tu inu kuch nahi keh sakda.
Yeah.
So I know she's constantly got my back. She is a very good mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe down to her age, her having 4 daughters herself, and then 4 daughter-in-laws as well, and she listens. When she goes to the Gurdwara, she listens to what everybody else says and how they are with their daughter-in-laws. I think it's a mixture of everything. I think I am the lucky one that I have got she is just amazing. There's nothing I can say bad about her. There is times, like they always say, whenever there's people together in a room, there's always going to be something that's happened, we do have disagreements.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about it. We won't argue. We won't shout, fight, or anything. We'll talk about it. We don't get in a strop, we're not there's no silent treatment or anything like that, and I think it's good that we've got that communication with each other.
Yeah.
There'll be times where she'll come home with a big bag of batol, and I'll be like, "There's only one person that eats it in the house.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with all these?" And she'll just be like, "Minu chungi lag this malay."
Yeah.
So I'm like looking like now they're just gonna be in the fridge for ages,
Yeah.
you know, um, little things,
Yeah.
and it's
But,
just
at the end of the day, nobody, even doesn't matter who's whatever family you come from, everybody has tiffs with their
oh
family
yeah,
members.
definitely.
You have it with your own mum and dad, So we're not talking about small little things that,
Mm,
you have disagreements. Sometimes my mum phones me and I'll be like, oh my God, how annoying, and I'm not talking about that sort of stuff. And we all do. And we can understand and accept that, we don't all get along, but we love each other,
mm,
this is something a bit more sinister, and some of the stories in the report, Suki, like talks about like how some of those women have been treated, those that have come to us for
Mm.
support. Can you share some of that as well?
Yeah, what I would really urge our viewers to do is really read our 2021 and 2022 report. For the first time ever, we have data on Sikh Panjabi women in the UK and how they had how domestic and sexual abuse impacted their lives. This work has never been done before, and for me, it really was shocking because everyone knows someone who's been impacted by it, but you never quite piece it all together in this way. And like for us, we had two-thirds of our women saying that they had experienced domestic abuse. And in our 2022 survey, we put this survey out to everyone. So we were saying, look, you don't even have to be a victim of domestic abuse. If you're not a victim of domestic abuse, you can still participate in this survey because we did want to understand the people who'd witnessed abuse as well. So over 800 women had responded to this. 99% said they were female and they were from the Sikh Punjabi community. Of those two-thirds that said that they had experienced domestic abuse, their perpetrator, one-third of them said it was their mother-in-law.
Mm.
So that's like 1 in 3 women. So 2 in 3 women are saying that they're being domestically abused. Then out of that, another third are saying it's my mother-in-law. And in some cases, the husband and wife are absolutely fine.
mm,
And it's the mother-in-law who is the driving force.
Mm.
And then it's consistent on our helpline because sometimes my personal number gets shared because I've been viral for various reasons on TikTok with my various videos, and people are like, oh, she's Sikh Women's Aid, so my number gets passed. So sometimes I will take those initial calls, and again, in about 1 to 3 of those calls, there's always the mention of the mother-in-law.
Mm.
So then I got researching. I was like, there's got to be something towards this. And you know me, Sadish, I go down some rabbit hole sometimes. And then I was doing a counseling course at the time. So I was doing my level 3 counseling, and I heard about Freud and Jung had these personality archetypes. And I went down that rabbit hole, and then I came across the devouring mother.
Mm.
And I remember reading this thinking, oh my God, every woman that I've heard tell me about their mother-in-law, this is the underlying personality
yeah.
type.
Mm.
And I think I went wild on this on our WhatsApp group for weeks. I was like, it's the devouring mother. So what this theory, and please do research it. I mean, God, you might get some answers to some of the men in your own families
Mm.
because it's not sometimes wives that are calling us, it's sisters.
Mm.
So sisters who've gone through a divorce and they've had to go back and live with their parents, and their parents are making them feel like utter failures
Mm.
while projecting their son against
Yeah.
their daughters.
And those sons for doing nothing, putting them
Absolutely.
on a pedestal for doing nothing but having whatever it is they have between their legs type of thing. That's the only important thing.
Mm,
Absolutely. And to be honest, I do feel sorry for those men because they have been brought up by these moms who not necessarily had good relationships with their husbands. So remember, we are the generation where our parents were like the first generation migrants, and my grandparents are the first generation migrants, and their lives went working. So either one worked and one stayed at home with the children. So they were like passing ships. The husband sees a world outside of the home. The woman doesn't see a world outside of the home.
Mm.
So
just to the corner shop and back.
and that's it.
Yeah.
And then what you then have is the attitudes that she has brought with her from India, that son means legacy, daughters are burdens that have to be married. And this is a horror, this is a very toxic mindset that emigrated from India in these families. I was never brought up like that. So when I was raised like a boy, I was the
Same here.
firstborn grandchild. I
Mm.
was like, my nana used to call me his sher about and I was brought up like a sher. So I never experienced this discrimination. So I'm putting that out there that I am one of those women who've never
So,
experienced it.
same here. Like my dad used to call me Mera put,
Mm.
like I'm his put.
Mm.
And me and my brother both learned how to clean the house and do certain things. My
Yeah.
brother is a fantastic cleaner and he is fantastic at cooking,
Mm.
you know. So that's how we were brought up.
Yeah.
And
Because,
most decent Sikh Panjabi men are like that. My husband's the same.
yeah,
So we know that this isn't all men. So the men that we're talking about are these men who are then who've been brought up by their mothers, because their mothers, one, have this thing that I've had the boy.
Mm.
I am now not going to get. I've ticked the box now. I have achieved the pinnacle of what I was meant to do as a wife. I have produced the son.
Mm.
And then it's almost at the point that he's born, everything else about educating him in this cohort of men I'm talking about,
Mm.
the fact that he's a boy, he must be protected, he must be loved, he must be pampered. And then the sisters are kind of brought into this devouring mindset that then they have to provide
yeah, and
for
they
this
have to do
brother.
everything.
Mm.
And then all of their needs and wants are sacrificed for the sake of this overgrown child that then just only develops into a man child.
Mm.
And then you have then this man's grown, then he becomes a burden on his mother, and she will never confront that as a burden
Yeah.
because that means she's failed.
Yeah.
So the answer is to find a girl. Now our girls, what's happened parallel to this is girls, to avoid early marriages and arranged marriages, threw themselves into education.
Mm.
Parents were okay with that.
Yeah.
So girls became independent, they became highly educated.
They had to.
They had to
They
because
had to build their strength, their resilience, and they became strong. And I think in some cases in our community now, people think that women are almost like stronger than men.
I
Mm.
think
I
that's what
think
we're
we
seeing now.
are, yeah,
Yeah.
I think we are
Yeah.
we are the we're classed as the weaker gender, but I don't think we are.
Yeah.
We're
Emotionally,
strong,
psychologically.
everything.
Yeah.
We run the house, we go to work, we do everything. When anything happens, we're the ones that are there.
Yeah.
We're the backbone of doing everything.
Yeah.
You know, I think very rarely do I see it the other way around.
Yeah. And
You
I think
know,
that's what's happened. It's almost like you've done your sons a disservice because you haven't built that strength in them. You haven't built the resilience in them. And so when things go wrong, they're unable to cope or don't know how
yeah,
to deal with situations. And sometimes what happens, not with all men, but sometimes that turns to anger and, sort of jealousy or hatred towards their wives who are then doing everything. But then the women get blamed because they're almost like told that they're too controlling or they're like this or they're like, but they have to be.
yeah.
They've had to be that person because they've had to bring up the children and go to work and look after the home and the in-laws and do everything else. But, yet they still get blamed for everything. I
But
mean,
it's always the women blaming the women. Have you
yes.
noticed? Like in our household, when growing up, both my mum and dad worked. They both worked shift work.
Mm.
So if my mum was at work, my dad would pick us up from school. My dad had a tendency of letting me sit on the table and help watching him cook and helping him cook. My brother, he's 4 years younger than me. He wasn't really interested.
Mm.
I wanted to know what was happening. They got to a point where I was on the footstool and I was watching and helping mix everything. Whereas when my mum used to pick us up from school, she would be like, right, do your homework, do this, do that. I'm going to quickly make the food. She didn't want the mess. She didn't want someone doing this. She just
Yeah.
wanted to get it done because
Yeah.
she had other things to
Million
do
and
as
one
well.
other
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
You know, but then friends of ours or other families that I saw, it was very much the dad was at work, so was the mum, but the mum had to finish early to pick the kids up from school, then come home.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes friends would come to our house and then the mum would pick them up from our house.
Yeah.
My mum would, or my dad would have, make tea and biscuits like you do after school,
Yeah.
but it was always the mum doing everything. And the
Yeah.
dad would come home. And I can remember one of my friends saying, does your dad not drink? And I
Yeah.
was like, my dad drinks. But I didn't think he was talking about alcohol.
Yeah.
I was like, and my dad drinks.
Mm.
We all drink. Like, they were like, no, like, does your dad drink sharab?
Yeah.
Like, it was one of them ones,
Yeah.
sharab.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. Like, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what alcohol was.
Yeah.
But, you know, and I was like, Dad, what's sharab? You know, and it was the way I said it, because I
Yeah.
just said it the same way they did.
Yeah.
And he was like, why? Why are you asking? I
Mm.
says, oh, because my friend said that, does your dad not drink sharab? You know, and it was. And he was like, no, but I only have it when there's a party or there's an occasion. I don't have it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So the next day back at school, I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I asked my dad,
Mm.
and he only has it at parties, and you know,
Mm.
and they were like, oh, because this was a family of friends of ours. There was a family of, I think, 4 sisters and 1 brother.
Mm.
The brother was in the middle, and there was 2 sisters either side.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they, you know, at playtime, because there's literally 2 of them were literally about 11 months apart.
Mm.
You know, that's the age gap between them. So they were all in school together, and they were like, oh, you know, oh, our daddy drinks it every night.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, is that a good thing? You know,
Yeah.
naive.
Innocent,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, no, we don't like it when dad drinks, you know,
Yeah.
because then they start comparing, don't you? You
Mm.
compare as a child, like,
Yeah.
oh, they do this and they don't.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, just tell him to stop.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, they couldn't, and they
Yeah.
couldn't,
See, that's
because
interesting, isn't it? Is that first generation factory jobs,
yeah,
drinking to de-stress, because that's what they did, didn't
That's the
they?
culture.
It was the
yeah,
culture that wherever there were factories, they built pubs on the corner. So
yeah,
after, and then our men had just started following what happened in
yeah,
there. So
and
they
they
were
were,
spending time in the pub to
mm,
de-stress. Mums were stressed out at home raising the children.
Mm.
And it's just like a melting pot of,
like, I've got 4 children, and I think if I didn't have the support and the backup of Suki, my mother-in-law, and like, you know, my Mossy came and helped as well, you know, with the triplets and stuff. I think I would have had a meltdown. Now, can
I
you
think
imagine?
anybody would have had a
Yeah.
meltdown. God, I don't know how you did it.
triplets.
But can you imagine having 4 kids, going to work,
Yeah.
coming home, cooking, not having that support of a mother-in-law, father-in-law, or the husband?
Yeah. Or like making it more difficult for you as
Yeah,
well.
you know, because you're having to then put up with that person coming home drunk
Mm.
or drinking.
Then you're managing them, you're walking
Yeah,
around eggshells on them.
yeah,
Who do you burden to?
Yes.
Because, like, you know,
exactly.
when we had to do Luckvi's funeral, I was so grateful for my husband at the end of all of that.
Yeah.
Just to be able to go home and just say, you know what, baby, it has been a really hard few weeks, and I wasn't even as involved intensely as you were.
Mm.
But just having that, and I think that generation of women that I'm talking about, devouring mothers, there was no emotional offload. Then
Mm.
this son comes,
Mm,
and then everything is poured into this son,
Yeah.
because he will make up for the fact that my husband drinks. He will make up for the fact that my husband is not around, or he hits me, or he's just not interested in me,
yeah,
or he
Mm.
actually wanted to marry someone else and got lumped with me.
Yeah.
Because we also hear this as well when
Yeah.
when you start uncovering the backstories.
Mm.
Then this poor son has given everything to his mom emotionally, that by the time a wife comes around, neither of them actually know
Mm.
how to handle the wife. And the wife's
yeah,
coming in with all of these expectations
Yeah.
that this will be my husband, it'll be different. And then,
And he needs to divert his attention,
yeah,
doesn't he?
yeah.
He needs to divert it from mum to, obviously they would still be there, but some of it. But now you've got to share that time. He has to share that time between his mum and his wife. But it's how the mum takes it.
Yeah.
Like how she sees that her son then suddenly only giving 50% of the time to her, and the rest of it goes to the wife. But actually it shouldn't even be 50%. I mean, that's his life partner.
yeah. Like,
know?
I see a lot of people coming to the cafe, a
Mm.
lot,
Mm.
and we have regular customers and we have random ones that come. And out of the regular ones, you know, you start people watching as well while you're
Mm.
working and listening, and you know, there's this one couple, newlywed. Well, they were newlywed when we first opened up. They're not newlywed now, and every week they would come, and they would come with the mother-in-law every week.
Mm.
And then the one week they came alone. So I'm thinking, oh, kuch hota nahi kya, Auntie Roo and stuff. And I'm like, oh, how's Auntie? And they're like, she let us come by ourselves. I was like, oh, I thought they were going to say, oh, she's gone
Like,
away, or
oh.
she's not well, or, they were just like, she let us come by ourselves.
Oh, bless.
I
So
know.
these two, but what's really nice about that story is that both of the couple were on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what's important here. When both are on the same page, you
Yeah.
can work with the devouring
I know.
mother
Yeah.
and say, look, we're still here, but you need to go like find your friend and your life and
Yeah.
but
Your
they ha-
hobbies and
Yeah.
they have nothing outside their
Yeah.
children.
yeah.
And the devouring how they are on their daughters is that over controlling,
Yes.
over policing of the daughters,
Yeah.
whilst overindulging on the son.
Yeah.
And then both sets of children turned out with huge amounts of trauma that they then carry on into their next
Well,
marriages.
it's generational, isn't it? So we all love films and movies and Punjabi films for you, Minnu, and obviously Bollywood for us as well. So Rocky or Rani ki Prem Kahani, I think we've all seen it, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen that one.
So that whole story, and as much as people might say it was a hit or a flop or whatever, but actually what I found really interesting, what I liked about the film was the characters. And Jaya Bachchan, her character as the devouring mother, she played it so well.
She did.
And I don't know whether she's like that with Aishwarya Rai. Sometimes you read stuff and you think, that's really interesting. But the character that she plays and the way that she brings up her son and the way she treats her daughter-in-law, they literally are servants, the daughter-in-law isn't she? Even after however many years.
But even the way she treats her husband.
Yes. And that's the
and
other
not
thing,
let
isn't
the
it?
son
Have a
have a relationship with the,
Yeah.
almost as if she would lose her son if
Yeah.
he had a relationship with
Well,
the
she
father.
didn't want him to be like his dad. That's what she didn't want.
Yeah.
And that's the other really interesting concept about this, because in some cases, like what we've talked about, is where the husband ignored the wife or he was abusive to the wife. But we've come across quite a few cases where she's the matriarch in the family. So
Yes.
even the husband doesn't have a say in what goes on in the house. She's the controller.
That
And-
was definitely the case in Bachchan Kaur and Surjit Atwal's. She
Yes.
was the absolute matriarch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing happened without her say
Yeah.
so.
And in some cases, we've had cases where there is not even a husband in the home. So that he's passed away or something's happened. So she is the controller of everything. And so we can't even blame a man in this situation.
No, of course.
So we got some work to do in our community. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to share a quick story about a friend of mine's from some time ago. And she said that when she first got married to her husband, and people go through a honeymoon period, don't they, between husbands and wives, and they liked to have fun, together. And she said that they had lots of toys that they used to put it nicely. That they used toys and things like that. So she said that also a contraception pill and so on. Anyway, so one day, whilst my friend and her husband have both gone to work, the mother-in-law went into the bedroom and
Oh,
basically
God.
looked
God.
around, found all the toys and the contraception, and in them days this is prior to social media, so pictures and magazines and things like that. And she said that I came back from work and my husband came back from work, and she said, we were there, and she goes, and my father-in-law was there. And she said to me, my mother-in-law had this big pile of stuff in her arms.
Oh my
And
God.
basically went downstairs and threw it at her father-in-law, my friend's father-in-law's feet. And you know what I'm talking about when I'm saying
Of
toys.
course,
Yeah.
of course.
And said, look, teri no diyan kartuta. She said, like, look what your daughter-in-law is doing. They're both, the stuff is both theirs, not just the daughter-in-law. And my friend said, oh my God, I didn't know what to do, where to look.
What did her husband do?
He didn't know what to do.
It's funny. She probably can't read or speak English, but she knew what the contraceptive pill is.
So, but this is what she was doing. We're laughing about it because it was a really funny story.
But can you imagine at the time?
What was she trying to do or trying to prove about this daughter-in-law? Like,
That her daughter-in-law was this wanton sex goddess that was corrupting her son, not considering that actually they were involved in joint enterprise. It was fully consensual by both parties.
Yeah. I've had women say stories like, older women, I've heard them gossiping and saying things like, that my daughter-in-law hurts my son. And you're listening, you're thinking like, what do you mean hurts my son? And she's like, he's got scratches on his back. She scratches him. So she's talking to other women about how awful her daughter-in-law is.
Oh,
because he's
not knowing that her son probably likes it, innit? Okay, but jokes aside,
yes.
like, we always talk about the mother-in-law being that strong person, and the one, like with Serge Atwell's case, and like Jaya Bachchan as well. But then I think also, like with my mother-in-law, she is that strong person as well. Like, we'll all listen to her. She'll advise us properly. As well. So there is two totally different sides.
Absolutely. And we've dealt with cases where the problem is the daughter-in-law. Haven't we? We've had older women come to us, and and these women can't believe that their sons treated them in that way suddenly. That they've brought them up in that, high middle way. I done everything. Yes, absolutely. And suddenly, what's happened is he's turned against her and, basically beat her up to a state where, put her in hospital and so on. And we've even, sent, managed to repatriate with the help of the Indian embassy, repatriate somebody back to India because she didn't want to stay here with her son and daughter-in-law because they abused her so seriously.
You see, the key takeaway here is that the people listening to this episode, you will know these situations and you will identify them in your families. Please do not be a silent bystander to this, because if you continue to be a silent bystander, then the abuse continues through the generations.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up the podcast. So hopefully everybody listening has enjoyed it. So, but if you do need help, remember, contact us at Sikh Women's Aid. You'll find our social media, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, but also our website, and you can email us or call us. All our details are on our website. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.